Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel, and in today's video what we're going to do is we're going to go over the Yuffie DLC, see what kind of information we can pick up on that. There is a bit more out there at the minute. There was the Nomura interview that I did with Famitsu, and there's also like some bits and pieces that have gone up on the website and things like that, so yeah. Don't forget to drop a like on the video and subscribe for future Final Fantasy and JRPG related content, but let's get straight into it. Now, we'll start off by looking at the trailer. So, at the start of the trailer, you've got the first 30 or 40 seconds or so of the trailer are all to do with the Final Fantasy VII Intergrade, upgrade, patch, basically. But then it cuts to the Yuffie DLC that we're going to be getting. So, we'll start from there. And it kind of opens up with Yuffie doing some surveillance. Not too sure what the area is that she's looking at. I'd assume that the area that she's looking at is Sector 7, but I could easily be wrong on that one. So yeah, not too sure whether which sector it is. It looks like it could be Sector 7, but I could be wrong on that. And we hear then that Yuffie, not Yuffie, Yuffie, I need to change my pronunciation on that, is working for the Wutai government with Avalanche. So she's kind of a materia hunter for the Wutai government, and they're working in collaboration with this Avalanche cell, and probably the overarching Avalanche hierarchy in general. It does seem like Barrett's cell of Avalanche is separate to the rest of it, so it'd make sense that they're not going to be kind of involved in this, which we'll get into in a second. Then we meet Sonon, who seems to be the leader of this Avalanche cell at the very least. And he's going to be the other character that we've got alongside us most of the way, if not all of the way through this DLC episode. We do then see the main party for a minute. They're talking about what's just happened with Cloud, so it's just after Cloud's, we've fought Airbuster, won the fight, but then Cloud's fallen and he's off doing his thing with Aerith at the moment. So this is the timescale where it takes place. But it's very likely that this is going to be the only time that we see the main party. We might get to see little bits and pieces of them here and there, but I'm almost certain that the main party from like the main game, they're not going to be playable in any way. It's just going to be Yuffie and Sonon and maybe other people, who knows. We then get to see some of the gameplay, so we get to see Yuffie doing wall running and things like that, like we see Red 13 do towards the end of the main game. We also see a few other things like sliding down a pole, swinging across a gap using a rope, things like that. It's nice to see a bit of variation in how we're going to get about. And then we get into the combat, which looks really good. We get to see this absolutely massive attack from Yuffie. It turns out that that is an attack called Bloodbath. So it's possible that that's some kind of reference to the Bloodfest attack from Final Fantasy VII, the original game. Could well be. But yeah, it looks absolutely sick, and the combat in general with Yuffie just looks really good, really high intensity. Very similar to Tifa's combat, so a lot of people are going to enjoy that. It should be really good. And then as the trailer goes on, we get a little bit of story. It does seem, from what gets said in the trailer, that they get out of the whole area and possibly even Midgar before the plate collapses. We then get to see what looks like it could be a few different places. It could be the underground facility underneath Sector 7. I don't think it is, but it could be. Another place that it could be is also something to do with a previous game in the series in the compilation, and that'd be Deep Ground. It is very possible that that is where Yuffie and Sonon have to go to try and get this materia. It's not a guarantee, but it is very, very likely. It is looking like that's going to be the one. Obviously, as we get more information, we'll have a better idea. But yeah, it is looking very much like, we do hit Deep Ground in some way, shape, form, or capacity, which it could be quite interesting. It depends how they go about it, what they're going to do with it. We'll go into that a little bit further later on. And then right at the end of it, we see another thing that comes from an earlier part of the franchise, part of the compilation, and that is Vice. So Vice is the main antagonist of Dirge of Cerberus, which is right at the end of the compilation timeline-wise. He appears in some capacity. We do have a bit more information on what capacity that is, so I'm not going to go into Vice too much right now. But yeah, when I first saw him on the trailer, I was a bit like, ooh, what? No. Because it could be a bad thing that they're bringing all these characters in, but it depends. It's all about the delivery. It is 100% about the delivery. They could deliver this brilliantly. So yeah, I was a little bit concerned when I saw him. And then that's the end of the trailer. So the trailer looked really good. I'm not going to lie, I didn't really want any DLC to Final Fantasy VII Remake. I don't think it needed it. I don't think it needs this. But if it's good, who cares if it needs it? I mean, I don't know. I'm definitely going to give it a chance at the very least, because it does look good. It doesn't look like it's just some nonsense padding of the game or anything like that. It looks like it could be adding a lot to this whole Avalanche Wutai Shinra dynamic that's going on, and that they're definitely trying to make more of a point of. They're definitely trying to up Wutai's importance to the story. So this is a brilliant way of doing it, a separate episodic DLC, while not shoehorning that into the main story. Don't get me wrong, I think they could have put it into the main story and into the main game in some way, shape or form, and it would have made the game feel a bit less padded out. But I can sort of see why they've done this as a separate DLC. I'm not entirely like, oh no, DLC. Do you know what I mean? I can see why this is separate, so I'll give them a pass on this one. I didn't think I'd say that, but yeah. And then the next thing that we're going to look at is the synopsis that's come out. So the synopsis basically reads, the new Yuffie DLC will be 2 chapters long. So if you roughly work that out to what a chapter was in the original game, we're probably looking at about 5 hours. Something like that, 4 or 5 hours worth of content, which it's not a rubbish amount. That's my guess, at least. It's going to focus on Wutai Shinobi as they infiltrate Midgar and join forces with the main Avalanche branch to steal Shinra Company's ultimate materia. Now, that could be one of many things. We've seen a lot of speculation going on at the minute. I personally think it could be an MP Plus materia, because we all know that that is the most powerful materia. No? Not feeling it? Okay, but seriously though, it could be anything. It could be a bit of a play on words, and it could be Ultima rather than the ultimate materias. They've heard word of this materia called Ultima, and as the information's been passed along, it's changed a little bit over time, and it's gone from being Ultima to ultimate materia. That's a possibility. Another one is that it could be the huge materia, so they could be already working on what they can do with the huge materia that they've got from these reactors, because it already exists at this point, I'm sure. It's just, what they're doing with it. So it could be that. I've seen a few people say it could be the proto-materia, which, no, I don't think it's going to be the proto-materia, I'm going to be completely honest with you. Pretty certain it's not going to be the proto-materia. But it could be anything. It could be something new. Who knows? And yeah, this confirms then that it's after the bombing of the Sector 5 reactor. Midgar's in a bit of crisis, and amidst the chaos, the Wutai Shinobi begin their secret operations. Then it goes on to talk about Yuffie, it talks about Sonon, it talks about how they aim to steal the materia with aid from the main Avalanche branch, and they rush into enemy territory for the sake of their land and for revenge. Guided by the calls of the planet, the gears of a new destiny begin to turn. That last line is quite interesting. The gears of a new destiny. I need to think a little bit further on that line. I'm not 100% on what. Because it could just be a generic throwaway line, that just fits in with the themes of Final Fantasy VII Remake. But it could allude to a few different things. Possibly with the appearance of Vice, possibly with other characters maybe reappearing that are in other parts of the compilation. It could be something to do with Yuffie. Previously she was an additional character, she was missable, you didn't have to get her. So it could be saying that the new destiny is that she's now going to be more involved. There's a lot of different things that could mean. So yeah, I'm not too sure on that one. And then once we've got that synopsis out of the way, we've just got a few more details from the interview that Tetsuya Nomura did with Famitsu for February 21's issue. The first question that is asked is, it seems like you battle Vice in the DLC. Why did you choose that character? So yeah, straight in with the first question. What's he doing there? And Nomura goes on to say that since the strongest character, Sephiroth, is already in the game, we wanted to have another formidable boss aside from Sephiroth, so we chose Vice. I personally am curious as to how a battle will play out for the first time with Cloud versus Vice. In fact, I even asked the team to add Vice as a secret boss, ever since the PS4 version. So this is something that Nomura has definitely wanted to do, even in the original planning stages of Final Fantasy VII Remake. He wants to bring Vice into it as kind of like a super boss. Now, from what we saw in the trailer, it does look like he is in the training simulator, so it is possible that this is just data that Shinra have accumulated from the tests that they've done. But, there are other possibilities as well. I feel like we need a bit more information on what's going on as far as the storyline and things like that. But from what we can see here, we'll skip over the next question because it's just talking about what he's wearing. Does anyone care? Yes, he's wearing clothes. Excellent. But then the next question literally asks, it seems like the battle with Vice is done in Shinra's battle simulator. Will he be present in other parts of the story as well? And what will the battle be like? And Nomura refuses to give anything else, which, yeah, that could be very telling, the fact that he's refusing to say anything else. It tells me that they are going to try and work Vice and the Deep Ground story and, obviously things like Minerva and Omega and all that sort of business from Dirge of Cerberus, they are looking to work that into the overall narrative of Remake, which doesn't shock me, to be honest. I don't think it was a very good addition to the canon of Final Fantasy VII, like most of the compilation. I think Final Fantasy VII, realistically, should have just been left as a standalone game, given what's been done with it. But they are trying to bring that additional narrative into Remake, so it would not shock me if we saw Vice and Deep Ground and possibly even Genesis and Angeal and things like that maybe not becoming actual active characters in the story, but getting more of a mention and getting more focus put on them in the overall narrative. I think that's definitely a possibility. So the interviewer then asked what kind of character is the new character Sonon, and also what's the combat like when you've got Yuffie and Sonon together. Nomura kind of points out that Sonon's from one of the other Avalanche cells, so Barrett, Cloud, everyone like that, they're off doing their own thing in their Avalanche cell, while Yuffie and the others, they're doing theirs separately. The combat will be a bit different from FF7R. You're not going to be able to control Sonon. We'll be controlling Yuffie completely. Like that'll be the character that we control. But we are going to be able to issue commands to Sonon. So, yeah, we're not going to be able to fully control him, but we are going to be able to kind of request things of him. I've seen that there's also moves that you can, like dual moves where they team up and they deliver an attack together. So, yeah, it's more like Sonon's going to be kind of like almost an accessory to Yuffie. She's going to be the one that's running all the attacks, and Sonon's there to support. That's what it looks like from what's been said here. And yeah, it could be a good dynamic. Yuffie seems very much frontline, hands-on, get stuck in there and get the combat done. The combat style, like I say, it looks very similar to Tifa's, so you're definitely going to be right in the middle of the action, getting stuck in. And then Sonon seems like he's going to be at range, supporting Yuffie, teaming up for attacks, that sort of thing. Creating openings, all that sort of business. So yeah, it's a slightly different dynamic to what we got in the Final Fantasy VII Remake. We're only going to have the one character to control, but it should be engaging enough that we don't really notice too much of a problem. Obviously, it's going to be something that we're going to have to wait and see, get our hands on, and see how it plays out, but it looks like it should be really good. It looks fun. And yeah, that's everything. So that's all the information that we've got so far. My general feeling is that this is going to probably be a good addition to the overall story of Final Fantasy VII Remake. I still wish it would have been included in the actual game, but it makes sense why it hasn't been. It is a separate story. It is, something that they definitely want to expand on and grow, because it was a bigger thing in the compilation than it was in the original Final Fantasy VII. Wutai was kind of like a spent force in the original Final Fantasy VII. Like, they were just done. They'd been beaten into submission. Whereas in other parts of the compilation, they take a much more prominent role. So it makes sense that we are getting this separate story of Wutai, and it's getting fleshed out a little bit. But what about you? What do you think? Are you happy with the Final Fantasy VII Remake Yuffie episode DLC? Are you looking forward to it? What's the thing that you're looking forward to the most about this Yuffie DLC? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to drop a like on the video and subscribe for future content. But more importantly than anything, have a great day.